What's the worst job you've ever had? Corn detasseling downwind from a pig farm. Well, you don't notice the smell after half an hour, so just corn detasseling in general. Backbreaking, skin shredding, walking down rows of corn in the hot sun all day while some old kid checks up the row behind you and throws tassels that you missed at you. Pay is good though. Job sucks. They now have a mower that removes most of the tassels. They still hire people in midsummer to remove the ones that it missed. I had a chance to do it when I was a teenager in the late 1970s, but I had no desire to do it even though the money was very good. Having to get up at 5 a.m. was one reason why. Some of my friends did, and made about $500, $2,000 in today's dollars, for a few weeks' work. They were told to wear flannel shirts, jeans, and heavy shoes, preferably work boots. Night manager for a pizza place next to a huge university campus. I was getting paid $12.50 to manage a staff, deal with trucks, deal with insanely high sales volumes, and be a bouncer. I was 21. Every week I would have to shut down the bathrooms because something went horribly wrong. Most weekend nights I would have to kick people out, sometimes by force. I would be there until 8 a.m. sometimes cleaning up. The openers would arrive while I was still trying to take care of the aftermath of the previous night. Hotel housekeeping. If it comes out of the human body, I've cleaned it up. I started in a by-the-hour motel when I was 14, owned by a woman who didn't bother with hazardous waste procedure and cleaned up what looked like a murder scene with nothing but bleach and kitchen gloves. I walked into that room, and was absolutely positive that when I pulled the shower curtain open there was going to be a body in the bathtub. Thankfully there wasn't, just blood everywhere. Owner refused to let me report it, made me clean it, and I didn't want to get in shit for bleaching a murder scene at 14, so I never did call the cops. About my 6th year in the U.S. Army, I accepted a stateside assignment which was initially only a year in length. That ended up being 4 years of hell. For nearly the duration of that assignment, I reported to an asshole who made it his mission in life to destroy me mentally and physically. My morning would start at 7 with him effectively verbally assaulting me at the top of his lungs, complaining about everything he could think of, even the weather, and would end at 7 with him telling me to get some rest. He'd text me until 10 at night demanding I respond to emails and contact people in prep for whatever we had coming the following morning. He'd assign me to every detail he could find and would volunteer me out to other commanders who required my skill set. I'd work back-to-back shifts for the entire week, with only Sundays off. I spent almost the entire time traveling. At the end of it all, turns out the reason he hated me was because he thought I had hooked up with one of his ex-girlfriends. I hadn't. He tried to be friends with me after that. Fucking douche nearly ruined me, but I never caved once. The saving grace of this entire assignment that I was promoted twice and eventually rose to be his equal. I left the army shortly after with no friends, a distant relationship with my own children, a looming divorce, and no discernible identity of my own. I had sacrificed everything for that job and didn't even get an award out of it. Fun times. I worked for an MLM for a month during COVID. It was called Cutco. They said you'd get paid $15 an hour on the phone, but it was just for every 1.5 2-hour appointment you set up. They also didn't pay for the mandatory 5-hour meetings you were required to join, where you had to set up appointments to sell their shit to your family and friends. I obviously couldn't go out to get a job in April of 2020, so this seemed like a good deal for me. Obviously, it was not. After 2 weeks I stopped going to the meetings that were required and quit soon after that. Cutco was my first job and sucked ass. I didn't know what they were about and felt sucked in after the first meeting. My manager was a 22-year-old girl that pushed her work off on me to finish. I quit after she said I usually hire everyone, but if you have to make choices, I don't hire black people. Her direct managers were awful to their secretaries and constantly fought about their marriage in the office. They'd bring their kids in from home so save on babysitter costs and smoked in the office. Fuck her, fuck Dan and Monica, and fuck Cutco. They called it vector marketing here. I applied when I was about 18 without looking too much into it, and they called me for an interview almost immediately. This was suspicious as fuck, so I looked them up online and saw the horror stories. I called them back the next day and the girl on the phone was like, "You looked us up, huh? I understand and I hope you find something better." I felt so bad for her. Hope she's doing better nowadays, too. Former data analyst at an oil company that filed bankruptcy. No raises for 5 years. My overtime got cut. I was laid off and then rehired, and I said I wanted to be hourly because I knew I would be working more than 8 hours days, so I wanted to capitalize on that in a non-bonus eligible position. They fired my manager, who personally coded and automated a bunch of our reports so that the facilities we were helping could actually do their own analysis if they had the time. He was the only one who could troubleshoot the code if there were any issues that popped up. On a daily basis, people that couldn't believe 1 + 1 = 2 would argue with me that 1 + 1 = 3. Consistently undermined in front of dozens of people on morning calls. Paid well, kinda? But fuck those people. Honestly, they would get upset at their own data telling them the opposite of their expectations and say it was my team's fault for some reason. I quit and am now working at a hospital doing their analysis, and it's so much better because there are no egos and everyone is willing to learn, including myself. Street canvassing. Have you ever been the most hated person on busy city street? Do you want to spend your entire day around sleazy salesman types, scammers, drug addicts, runaways, the homeless, and the mentally ill? Do you want to develop a drinking problem? Do you have any interest on totally misleading job descriptions and minimum wage? Are you clever enough to underreport cash donations and pocket the overage? If yes, well, this might be the career for you. I had a boring warehouse job, pretty typical, but they vastly overheard and all the packing would be done halfway through the day, and then for the final 4 to 5 hours of the day, the owner would have all 16 of us sweep the warehouse. Do you know how much dirt and dust is left on the floor when 16 people spend 25 hours a week sweeping the floor? None. It felt like I was in some mediocre purgatory where I was forced to sweep nothing for half my life. So boring. Felt like killing myself every day. But if you got caught not sweeping the air, you'd get yelled at. So sweep we did. Easy job, but killed my soul a little. I had to take manuals and scan them into PDF format and make links on the table of contents, so it'll take you to each chapter. It started alright at first until they decided I was the only one that'll scan for 6 or 7 people. I'd scan multiple manuals, put them on a disk and give it to them. Then they decided to increase it to 4 10-hour days, so I'd wake up at 4:30 a.m. to make it to work by 6 a.m. and leave at 4:30 p.m. Then the 2 people next to me decided they would only scan these small cards and not do any manuals and just bring in movies to watch, and I had to pick up the slack. I was studying for Security Plus at the time because I had to get out of there, and every time I took a break to study, my supervisor instantly hits me with the "Oh, did you need more work to do?" I used to work in a call center that dealt with processing applications for landlords getting mortgages on new properties so they could rent them. Usually 5+ properties rented out, and all they have to do is pay the interest on the mortgage each month. I could barely afford to rent my 700 quid 1-bed apartment, and these assholes were paying less than 300 a month in some cases to rent a property to people like me. Had to leave it because it was so busy. We were expected to take 100+ calls a day for pennies. It sucked having to work for the bad guys. Doing agency work. There was a cheese factory notorious for being the filter for newbies. It was a cold warehouse in winter, evening shift, lifting 10 to 20 kilograms blocks of cheese from a pallet onto a conveyor belt. Then once the pallet was empty, get another, rinse and repeat. This went on for 10 hours. My pudgy body was aching about 6 hours in, and absolutely written off at the end of my shift. Thankfully, a very kind Romanian man who I was tasked with offered me a lift home with his family as he was nearby. Otherwise, I'd have had to walk 3 miles home. The foreman was this 6 feet plus Russian man who was, in all sense of the word, terrifying. My guess is that he didn't see many newbies stick around, so he didn't respect them at all. Too much manual labor, even for someone physically fit. Horrible people, horrible environment. My first real job was the worst I ever had. I worked taking tickets at the front gate of an amusement park when I was 15. You would think that would be a pretty easy/low-key job, but people suck. I have never been screamed and cussed at more in my life than I was for that one summer. This amusement park sells adult and children's tickets based off height. If you were over a certain height, you had to have an adult ticket regardless of age because you were tall enough to ride all the rides in the park. The gate where we took the tickets had poles that were the maximum height for a children's ticket, so we could tell if someone was too tall for the ticket. It was stated on the tickets and at the ticket counter that those were the rules. People would buy children's tickets for their adult height children and then get in my face and scream at me because I couldn't let them into the park. I didn't sell them these tickets, mind you. That was the worker at the kiosk before mine, but I was the one who got all the abuse. You would think adults would be mature enough to not scream at a child for their own mistake, but sadly many are not. This would happen multiple times a day the entire summer. I have never taken another job working with the general public since that summer. First foray into the world of software development. Job was a complete fucking shit show. No direction given. Get yelled at for not doing anything when not given anything to do, lots of fucking big talk, little action to back it up, substandard industry pay, no benefits, no insurance, but here's a fancy health savings account, no 401k matching, out in the middle of buttfuck, Egypt, have to sign a fucking contract for the privilege of working for them. Training was a bullshit joke, and if you try to break your contract, they'd charge you $10,000 for the cost of training. Fucking joke and a half. Co-workers were nice, at least. Worse than anything was their fucking mindset, like they were hottest shit on the sun, when they might be at best, well, cold diarrhea in a fucking Dixie cup. Yeah, fuck them. A few months ago when I moved, I was willing to get any job I could find. Soon I had a job as a credentialing manager. Why I was hired as a manager I have no clue, because my coworker had tons more experience than I did, for a private nursing staffing agency. Basically the staffers would contact their contracted CNAs, LPNs or RNs to a retirement home and try to get them the most hours possible. The more they worked, the more they made. My job was to do background checks, set up their profiles in our system, scan and certify their certifications, etc. Later on I helped our CEO with updating invoices that had been paid by the facilities, and for the first month I loved it. It was easy to do. I was able to catch on to when the staffers were trying to push nurses into shifts without their credentials being verified, and I was getting paid almost double what I got at my last job. Then our CEO, who was also the only person in HR, so huge red flag, said, "Hey Lilycraft, you ain't doing much. How about helping me with payroll and helping out with time cards, and I'll pay you $1,000 commission if you don't fuck up. Sound good?" "Good, cause you don't have a choice. Welcome to hell." So basically my coworker, basically the only silver lining and decent human being at that place, were tasked to do the job of 3 people because she wanted to be out of the office as much as possible. She didn't want to replace her dead accountant. And she didn't want to keep training staffers to do their staff's time cards because the door was always revolving. So basically, I had to file nurses into our system as quickly as possible, or else the staffers would nag and scream at us and try to get everyone's time cards, verifying if they were even legit or not, and explaining to pussy nurses that no, we can't read their times off of their shitty iPhone picture in their car, or we didn't get it from the nursing home's shitty scanner, and we had to pay about 50-75 people each without fucking up somehow. But if their hours were wrong, or God forbid they were promised holiday pay or extra from a staffer without the staffer getting it approved through the CEO or US, we were basically responsible for them not having enough money to feed their kids for the week, and we had to scramble for a resolution to fix it. Combine that with the douchebag staffing agents treating us like the shit on their shoe and pushing their mad nurses onto us, when they knew damn well it was for something they did or missed. And that's how you break the mental stability of a vibrant young woman in a new city, so that she has to pop a Xanax every morning because waking up to go to work feels like I'm walking to the gallows. The final straw came near my 3-month mark when the CEO heard from her top brown noser, a staffer who had been there for 5 years, think Randall from Recess Butt and the body of Miss Finster, that Lillicraft and co-worker aren't getting our files in fast enough. Why do we have to wait on a background check? I want money. Me, at my wit's end and on the verge of tears the whole day, explained that at the beginning of the week, as she told us before, payroll and getting in time cards and sending invoices to the nursing homes was top priority the first days of the week, with our credentialing getting done as soon as we are done. Basically saying we are doing the 3 jobs you told us to. Of course we would rather do one. This is too much. She just tilts her head and says, well, it's not that much work. I had one person doing your work before and she didn't complain. P.S. That one person was her daughter-in-law and she literally fucked up everything. She even mixed up nurses' social security numbers. She got so frazzled. At first I looked down on her cause I had only heard what the others were telling me about her. Now I 10,000% get it. Basically this ended with me sobbing to my mom in the car on my way home because I knew I would never be good enough no matter how hard I tried. She just said, girl, please quit. I have never heard or seen you like this. It's not worth it. Even my coworker agreed when I told her I couldn't do it anymore. I told her right before that the stress was so bad I started smoking again and she was mortified. I didn't even give that bitch notice. I just emailed a letter to the CEO saying thank you. I realize now I will never be the superhuman worker you want me to be and I can't keep going like this, to which she replied, "'Kay, good luck." But wait, it gets worse. So the 3 weeks after I left, my coworker was waiting to hear from the job she applied for with another company, got up to the plate and was fucking killing it with time cards and payroll like the fucking rock star she is. After she quit and we were both employed again, we got dinner and the tea. Oh god, the tea. Basically while she was busting her ass, she made no errors on payroll for 2 weeks straight. She asked our boss about that $1,000 commission she promised us. She goes, what? Why would I give you commission for doing your job? I never said that. Like all of that. And you didn't even keep up your end of the bargain, even though the staffers were getting like $2,500 commission. So you're denying the only reason we were even trying to stay. K. So basically by the time she quit, the top staffing group lost $40,000 in revenue because the nursing homes didn't want the nurses to work 16-hour shifts or overtime since it cost more, and the boss had hired 2 credentialists on the spot, but neither one showed up on their first day, either because they didn't realize they were offered the job or they saw the red flags and fucked right off. Either way, we are both in much better positions and much happier. TLDR. Don't work for a CEO who is also HR, because chances are they'll give you multiple hats too, because it's cheaper to overwork people than hire more staff. Fuck you, Valerie. Obfuscating things so I don't end up outing myself. I worked for the worst boss ever. My manager had no idea what she was doing, or what I was doing. She was very new to the role, and both stupid and malicious. She'd do the usual power plays, putting me in situations where I'd be working from 7:30 to 2300 hours every day 6 days a week, excluding me from team meetings, team lunches, team coffee mornings. She'd give me no help or support, and penalized me for not meeting objectives when she refused to tell me what they were. So bad, right? She was so goddamn vile. When a team member got carjacked and ended up in a 5-day coma from being crowbarred across the back of his head, she put him on a disciplinary when he came back because nobody had called in his absence. I was the second person to grab my stuff and walk out that day. I worked as a receptionist in a touristic place, only lasted a few weeks, but I never want to do it again. It made me painfully realize that people are essentially huge entitled morons who cannot differentiate the sidewalk from their own ass. By the last week I thought I could start insulting them. My contract ends in a week. I could just get up on the desk and scream till they go away.